Every now and then, or not. Hey everyone, and welcome to Chef AJ Live. I'm your host, Chef AJ, and this is where I introduce you to amazing people like you who are doing great things in the world that I think you should know about. As happens more often than not with this show, my guest was referred by another guest who's really a dear friend of mine, Dr. Lori Marbas, who founded a wonderful interactive online plant-based telehealth so people can get the kind of medical care they deserve that they often can't get if they're plant-based from their doctor, even if their doctor's wonderful. A lot of doctors just don't know the kind of things that plant-based and lifestyle medicine doctors know. And he is one of the doctors that works within her community, and his name is Dr. Jeff Pierce. I'm meeting him for the first time, and please welcome him to the show. It's nice to see you.
Hi, it's very good to be here. Thank you very
Great.
much.
Well, since I don't know you, this will be easy because every question I ask, I'll want to know the answer to. So even before we get into the telehealth, which I think is really amazing, even before the pandemic, I did it. You know, I had a doctor at True North, and I just think it's great. Even if you have a wonderful doctor locally that takes insurance, just to have somebody that is so knowledgeable on plant-based nutrition on your team, I think it's absolutely worth it. So are you plant-based? When did you become plant-based? Why did you become plant-based? Do tell.
Sure thing. So let's see. I am plant-based. I've been plant-based and vegetarian initially 21 years ago. Back in 2000, I'm born and raised in southern Texas, that is South Texas, and I was in college, University of Texas Pan American, real close to the Texas-Mexico border. In my last year of college, I watched a special. It was like a random HBO special on the animal agriculture, and my eyes were open really for the first time. And so I couldn't believe that this was really the back hidden story to the food that I've been eating, coming from Texas, having a lot of meat through my life until that, however old I was at that age, at that year, probably 21 or so, 21, 22. And so it was compassion that initially moved me in this direction for the animals. And I followed that way of eating for the last 21 years. But in the last handful of years, as I really started to delve into the science behind, wait, it's not just good for the animals to eat this way. It can be really good for our own health and for the health of the planet and the health of our communities. And that reaffirmed my decision and made me own in on a healthier diet.
Yeah, that's wonderful that you did it. I really appreciate that you did it for the animals, because in more recent, it seems that like back in the day, because I'm the OG, I've been vegan for 44 years. And let me tell you something, 44 years ago, when I was 17, nobody went vegan for the environment. Nobody talked about the environment in the 70s, and really nobody was doing it for health. And so that was why people did it. But thanks to wonderful documentaries like Forks Over Knives and Eating You Alive and What the Health, people are doing it for their health. But I find, and again, I've never done any surveys, that if people don't have that compassion piece, it's just too easy to go back to eating animals. Because you can say, well, you know, I've reversed my hypertension, so, you know, a steak once a month isn't going to hurt me. But if you have that ethical line, you're just not going to go back.
Yeah, that's how it's been for me. And it's great for people to come here for all sorts of reasons, like you said, to reverse their heart disease and diabetes, and they want to make the planet a better place. But for me, having that initial impetus to eat this way has helped me stay this way for a long time.
Do you remember the documentary that you saw? Because it wasn't Earthlings.
No, it was something that was on just on, I guess, HBO, and so it wasn't actually all that graphic, but just, you know, even I remember just seeing the close quarters on a truck that was being shipped from place to place, and I was just like, oh wait, you know, the cows aren't all smiling on green pastures under the sun. And I was naive for sure, and but just knowing a little bit of the backstory was what did it for me.
Well, thank you for your compassion, because I really appreciate that. You know, Paul McCartney once said, if slaughterhouses had windows, everyone would be vegetarian. And they keep that information from the public on purpose. As a matter of fact, I believe they made it illegal to even film inside a slaughterhouse.
Yeah, and that I think is part of the indignation of being sort of tricked or having this hidden from us. Like, we can't take the truth. is insulting, and I think part of what fuels a lot of us who eat this way.
Yeah. And a lot of people just don't want to know if you try to tell them, I don't want to know where my meat comes from, because then maybe I'd have to make some changes.
Yeah, that's fascinating too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Well,
that's not the way for them. If they, then we focus on their health or something
right.
that works.
So when did you put the two and two together, that what you were doing out of kindness also was going to help human health? When did you become a doctor, and what kind of doctor are you?
Okay, let's see. Well, I'm a family doctor, and I went to college and medical school in Texas, and then I went to medical school at Baylor College of Medicine, which is the same place that Dean Ornish went to, and I met Dr. DeBakey there, and Dr. Ornish has some really interesting stories with his interactions with Dr. DeBakey, the famous cardiothoracic surgeon who's now passed on, and I came out to Santa Rosa for my family medicine training, and I was focused on global health and HIV, tuberculosis, malnutrition through medical school and residency. And my first job after residency was actually in Africa. A lot of my work has been in the developing world, with a focus on tropical infections, HIV. I was working with a pediatric HIV group, very thankful to work with the Baylor International Pediatric AIDS Initiative in Lesotho, which is a little kingdom in southern Africa that looks like it should be pronounced Lesotho when you see it on a map. And I was working with families and kids who were dealing with the scourge of HIV, tuberculosis, and malnutrition. And the malnutrition I saw there were kids typically under a couple of years of age who had the malnutrition that that a lot of us think about with wasting, and you could see their ribs and all of this stuff, oftentimes based off of weaning breast milk too early for various reasons, being convinced by companies like Nestle that they could afford some of this formula. Then, of course, the family couldn't afford it, and the baby then could no longer breastfeed. And so I was dealing with that malnutrition out there. And it wasn't until I came back and was practicing more in America that I was faced, of course, on a daily basis of the malnutrition that we see in the developing world all the time. So those were my initial forays into malnutrition, and seeing the contrast that there is in countries like where I worked in South Sudan and Malawi and Kenya and Lesotho. During my work there, I met my wife, and my wife was the one who really showed me how, even though I was vegetarian, I was not actually eating all that healthily. And I remember her coming over, and I was trying to make some food, and I was I had the bachelor way of cooking that involved a lot of microwaving and beans out of a can. And when she, dumped several handfuls of chopped up kale and parsley onto the dish, I was, what's going on here? And, we don't need to put cheddar cheese on this and stuff like that. And so it was really her introduction to a healthier way of eating plant-based. And then little by little, I started stumbling across the really, of course, fascinating work that has been done by the big people in this field, such as John McDougall and Alan Goldhammer and Michael Clapper and Michael Greger and Dr. Neil Bernard and several others in the field. And that was when my eyes were really opened up to, wow, I've been seeing tons of patients with high blood pressure and heart disease, diabetes, and gastrointestinal illnesses. And I've been in our little 15-minute visits, I've been prescribing the pills, and I've been recommending the procedures. And, I've given them sort of the 3-second, oh, you should eat better and do more exercise, that I thought was kind of what people needed to hear, and they probably wouldn't do it anyway. And that's all changed for the better, of course, now that we know so much more about lifestyle medicine and the effect of diet on health.
Okay. So what are you board certified in? What is your specialty?
So my specialty is family medicine, and through family medicine, you can do, all sorts of things. And I have done, besides the work in the developing world, worked in emergency rooms, worked in inpatient settings, and now my main job is doing obstetrics. So I'm working with a population that's mostly in an inner city urban area just outside of Oakland in Northern California. So most of my patients are African American, Latina, South Asian, and working with them to help introduce healthy diet and other lifestyle methods to helping them have a healthy pregnancy, and then teaching the young doctors in training, the residents in family medicine at a top-notch family medicine training program, some of this stuff about lifestyle medicine, as well as how to deliver babies, how to do C-sections, how to take care of people, moms with really high-risk conditions, uncontrolled diabetes, and hypertension, preeclampsia, and things like that.
Wow. So do the people come to you after they're already pregnant?
Yes. I do not see people who are not pregnant right now in this job, which is interesting in one way, where you get to focus on the pregnancy, and that's where your specialty is, and your focus during your conversations with your patients. But then you miss the opportunity to work with women who are in the preconception phase of their life, where they're thinking, I think I might want to have a child in the next year. And it's in that time where you can say, okay, great. You have insulin resistance, you have diabetes, you have borderline high blood pressure, you are 50 pounds overweight. Let's work together right now to maximize healthy weight loss, healthy eating, so that you won't be getting high blood pressure, diabetes, blood clots, and other complications that you can see associated with the lifestyle diseases that dominate right now.
Don't pregnancies often become more complicated in births as well, when people have things like obesity and other lifestyle related diseases?
Definitely. Yeah. It's those conditions that I was just mentioning with gestational diabetes, so diabetes that just happens during pregnancy, also having diabetes coming into pregnancy that you weren't aware about, high blood pressure, heart disease, developing preeclampsia, having labor complications to where your labor is not progressing the way it should, and need for a vacuum delivery, need for a C-section, having a baby that gets stuck halfway out because you can't squeeze the baby through because of the extra wide shoulders and trunk that the baby has because of your problems with sugars during pregnancy. I mean, the list is long, it's huge, and so many of our patients, because of many reasons, right? Because of the the structural racism that's inherent in the having so many fast food places and junk food that is being marketed particularly towards people of color, and other reasons. It's a problem that we see on our labor board and in our clinic all the time, every single day. The majority of my patients are dealing with this, not the minority.
Wow. And plant-based telehealth, what are you seeing? Because obviously when you're doing virtual medicine, you're not actually physically examining the people. So.
Right. And so I am thankful to have been lucky enough to join the group of docs at Plant-Based Telehealth. So Lori Marbus and the rest of the crew, it's been really nice to be one of the now 7 doctors that are part of this group, where we are able to take care of patients in all 50 states and internationally as well, depending on what medical licenses we individually have. I'm licensed to see patients in California and in Texas, but between the 7 of us, we can see everyone in every state. And that brings a different clientele, a different group of patients, right? There are some people who are like, oh man, I just was told that I have uncontrolled diabetes, and I would love to work with you to get that under control. I am afraid of being on insulin. I'm afraid of having a heart attack like my dad had. I don't want to get Alzheimer's like my grandma had. I heard you do some, I see the way that you eat at work, and it seems like there's something about that. What can I do with diet to reverse this? But then I also get a fair amount of patients who are already plant-based and are eating really well and are exercising and sleeping well, and they say, well, I want to tweak this little thing. What other sorts of recommendations can you give me? And they're already eating a whole food plant-based diet, and they're already doing some of the great little tweaks to really dial their health in. But through some training and research, I can offer them a few extra things to help them with their health.
Great. So you say how you eat at work. How do you eat at work, and how do you eat at home?
Sure. I enjoy making food from many cultures. I grew up in a bicultural household. My mom's side is Mexican American, and my dad's side is Caucasian. Been in the U.S. for a long time, and so I had the experience of course, eating the foods that in South Texas we call Tex-Mex, which to a lot of people tastes really good, but are really, in general, is really unhealthy. It's very heavy in meat, very heavy in dairy and eggs. But the flavors can be there whether or not you're eating the traditional Tex-Mex diet or eating a whole food plant-based diet, because it's the salsas and it's the way that you can prepare foods that give you the flavor. The love that I have associated with this food is still there, whether or not it's chickpeas and rice or chicken and rice. And so now I'm eating, of course, the arroz con garbanzos, or the chickpea and rice dish with the same flavor that my mom made when we were little, and now she makes it that way as well. But so I cook a lot of Indian style food at home, a lot of Chinese, Thai, Mexican, etc. And when I go I work, unfortunately, my job in the OB, in the hospital in the OB department is a little more than an hour away in my commute. So I thankfully only have to do it a couple of days a week, and I'm thankful enough right now to be driving an electric car and having solar. So I feel like my footprint is smaller than it was before. But I have to bring my food with me because
There's nothing healthy to eat at the hospital. That's why.
well, it's interesting. Hospitals, of course, are famous for fueling future customers by having McDonald's in their hospital, like at the county hospital in Houston, where I was working, and the children's hospitals that you see where the kids are going to McDonald's, and multiple examples of that, of course, across the U.S. But we're in Northern California, and so even in residency and in my current job, they have veggie options and vegan options. And but I'm a bit of a penny pincher, and I'm also picky about what the tastes and what I eat, and so I can make it better, I think, than what the typical cafeteria can provide, even if it is vegan. And so I will make a dish that I keep in a smallish Pyrex type Tupperware type thing, where it's almost always a grain, which is typically brown rice. Recently, through Michael Greger, I found out about the bro bowl type of stuff. So starting off with wheat berries and barley and oat groats, etc., but some sort of a healthy whole grain at the bottom, some sort of a legume, typically beans, but lentils, chickpeas, etc., and then greens. And that's like, if you wanted to, just bet what I'm bringing to work, it's going to be that most of the time. But it's usually leftovers from the night before. We try to cook enough to where we have multiple days of leftovers with our meals, as a time saver, and of course to help take food to work. And like I mentioned, we're in Northern California, so we're blessed to have a climate that allows us to grow our own food year round. And so my wife is who introduced me to this, but when you come into our yard, which is kind of an average size yard for our part of the town, of the city, it's just, you can't really walk without bumping into a vegetable, because we have turned almost all of our growing space into something that you can eat. So fruit trees and greens, etc. And I wish I could take you guys for a tour right now if the internet was better walking around. But I saw you had John Kohler from Growing Your Greens the other day on your show, and he was he's one of the people that I follow on YouTube for all of the work that he does. And that's kind of how we run our garden, and we eat from it 2 to 3 times a day.
Wow. Well, I know you're coming back in the fall as part of Plant-Based Telehealth Week. Maybe you'll get a better internet by then or something. That would be amazing.
Yeah, I can bring at least some photos that we can do on a PowerPoint type thing.
Oh, that would be great. I love how you say the hospital served food to ensure repeat business.
Kind of,
yeah. That's just, I don't get it. So Lauren, who's watching live, said, could you please elaborate what you mean about problems with sugar during pregnancy makes the baby wider? What?
Oh yeah, sure. It's a really important topic to know about. And so a baby that is born to a mom with diabetes of some form or the other, whether it's gestational only during pregnancy or pre-existing diabetes, those babies are typically exposed to higher levels of sugar because the sugar in mom's blood is filtering through the placenta. And it affects the baby's endocrine system, the baby's internal systems that process sugar. That leads to, it's probably through insulin-like growth factor, but multiple pathways, I'm sure, leads to babies that grow differently than a baby whose mom does not have problems with sugar. So you can have, there's a great picture on the internet you could probably find where you have a 8-pound baby born to a non-diabetic mom and an 8-pound baby born to a mom with diabetes, and that baby born to a mom with diabetes is chunkier. It looks more like a linebacker, and the weight is distributed more so in the trunk, so that those moms at a lower fetal weight, at a lower newborn weight, will have more problems with the baby's head being delivered, but then getting stuck at the shoulders, and that's called a shoulder dystocia. And, I've been doing high-risk obstetrics for a long time. And, tough C-sections can be scary and traumatizing, but a baby that gets stuck at the shoulders where you have seconds to get the baby out without there being permanent neurological damage and broken clavicles and broken humeruses and stuff like that to get the baby out. It's one of the scariest things scariest situations to be in as a healthcare provider. And so that's one of the main reasons, there are many, but one of the main reasons that we are on top of moms with diabetes to really keep their sugars under control, especially in the second and third trimester, to keep these babies growing at a healthy level and avoid what we call macrosomia, which is a baby that's too big.
Great, thank you. Let's see, I saw a question. I know you really can't give medical advice, because you're not the person's doctor, but maybe you could speak broadly about this.
Sure.
From JL. My daughter is pregnant. Her BMI is 41. She has high blood pressure and blood sugar. She's been vomiting for several weeks and lost about 15 pounds. Should we worry about weight loss? I think she needs to see her OBGYN.
Yeah, it is. And so, it's a good thing to talk about, and thank you for bringing it up. And I agree that it's a good reason to go see your doc. I mean, in general, so there's nausea and vomiting in first trimester, which is the nausea, vomiting in pregnancy. That's very, very common, often triggered, interestingly enough, by fatty foods and getting away from meats and dairy and fatty processed foods in first trimester, eating more vegetables, eating more sometimes sour things can help with that. Ginger, of course, is a really great route for helping that, as well as many other things. So that's one thing. If she's later in pregnancy, second and third trimester with new onset vomiting, that can be a sign of something particularly scary. So things like preeclampsia, where you have high blood pressure and also internal organ damage and other conditions like that, you can see associated with new onset vomiting. Having high sugars, having high blood pressures, having a BMI 41, these are all things that, yeah, you have to be working with your doc on a weekly basis with, working with hopefully a good dietitian, nutritionist that's hip to plant-based preferably. I think you asked if she should lose weight, and that's
I guess the bigger question is weight, like, for instance, she said they told her at the ER she went to get IV fluids for dehydration, but she's wondering in general if weight loss is necessarily a bad thing during pregnancy if you start out severely obese.
Yeah. So that is a very interesting question because it goes back to what we were talking about earlier about the preconception time period, because that's the best period where you're focusing on weight loss. In general, once we have patients that come, even who are 20, 50, 100 pounds overweight, the goal is not to focus on, okay, you need to lose as much weight as possible before you deliver, because in general, weight loss is not recommended during pregnancy. If there is some weight loss because she's in first trimester and having a lot of vomiting and is not hungry, that is usually actually tolerated really well, and the babies end up doing fine. But the best time to focus on weight loss, on healthy weight loss, is typically before pregnancy. And so at this point in the game, it's trying to eat as healthy as possible, get some exercise, because she's about to run a marathon with a sprint at the end, which is labor and delivery, and you want to be in good shape for that.
That's great. You know, I always wondered, you hear these stories about people that didn't know they were pregnant until they delivered. How is it possible to not know you're pregnant for 9 months?
Yeah, so we see that, fairly often. It's seen more often in women who have high BMIs, so high body mass indexes, where one of the hints that you're pregnant is that you see a baby bump, and earlier than that, most people realize that they're not getting their periods. But if they had irregular periods and they got a period 3 times a year to begin with, oftentimes due to the effect of the excess estrogens and hormones from excess body weight, that can affect your period regularity. Some women, suffer with tons of nausea and vomiting in the first trimester, but then others sail right through it, and they're like, "Wow, I'm 7 months pregnant. I didn't know it. I never got sick. I never was throwing up." And so lucky them in one sense, but also maybe not lucky them because they might have still been drinking and smoking and doing things with their life and their body that they wouldn't have if they had known that they're pregnant.
I always think it's so interesting when people think certain habits are good, but then if you can't do them during pregnancy, they probably aren't good at other times either.
Well, we are lucky enough to work with women who are the most concerned about their health at this point of life than they may ever be, right? And so it's the chance to say, look, I'm so excited for you that you are willing to stop eating fast food 3 times a week because you're concerned about your baby's health. And this is awesome. And let's work on this. Let's capitalize on this. And, there's some women that are, everyone has what they're ready and able to do. I had a patient yesterday who has a severe mental illness and had been smoking a pack a day, and she's down to a half a pack a day. And I am excited for her to be smoking a half a pack a day. And I asked her if she thought she would be ready to quit during this pregnancy, and she said no. And I said, well, are you ready maybe to smoke a quarter of a pack a day? And she said yes. And so we're going to work on that. And this is the time where she is most concerned about her health, to maximize her baby's health, and we're going to use that for her own good, for her baby's good as well.
Oh my God, I was born to smoking parents and I suffered with asthma my whole life. That's not fun. Well, can't make somebody, I suppose. Abdi says, I want to go fully 100% whole food plant-based, but I'm scared I won't be giving my children all the nutrients they need. Maybe you could speak to that.
Yeah, sure. So it's a great question, and you don't need to be scared. And there are all sorts of resources online that you can use to make sure you are eating what you need to be eating. And if you eat, we talked a little bit about being vegetarian or being vegan for the animals or for the environment, but not necessarily it benefiting your life. So there's the term junk food vegan, where you can eat Fritos and probably Twinkies and Coca-Cola, and help the animals, but not your own health. So if you eat like that, that is not a great way to maximize health for yourself and your baby during pregnancy. But if you eat a whole food plant-based diet, so you're eating the whole grains, you're eating the legumes, you're eating the greens, you're making sure that you are supplementing, whether or not you're eating dairy and a little bit of meat or not, supplementing with vitamin B12, and that's typically 1,000 micrograms twice a week. And Dr. Michael Greger on nutritionfacts.org has all sorts of great videos on this. And you'll be getting the nutrients you need. You don't need to eat cheese and drink milk to get calcium. There's so, where do the cows get it? Cows, my wife is French, and they certainly have a love for cheese, but not even French cows eat cheese. And so they eat grass, and that's where they get their calcium. And that's where we get our calcium as well. Not so much by grass, but by eating, kale and chard and collards and spinach and arugula and all these other things. And so eat a broad-based diet, look some stuff up. I'm sure either Brenda Davis and Reshma Shah, and there are many other plant-based resources. PCRM, Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, has great information for a healthy diet during pregnancy. And take your prenatal vitamin, you're getting enough folate. Some people supplement with extra iodine, but that's oftentimes in your prenatal vitamin. Just double check that it's got iodine, and you're gonna be great. You're gonna be healthy. And it's not just that you're, I'm going to eat enough to where I think it'll be healthy enough for my baby. No, it's the other way around. You're eating this way is going to decrease your chances for the high blood pressure and the diabetes and the preeclampsia and having a baby that gets stuck. So it's more than just barely making it. You're going to be doing above and beyond what the average mama is doing for their babies. So good for you.
Great. So when somebody comes to you for plant-based telehealth, they don't have to be pregnant, right? You can work on them with other lifestyle conditions. Is that correct?
Sure. Thanks for asking. Yes. So while my in-person physical day job at the county hospital is doing obstetrics, as a family doctor, we see everybody from cradle to grave. And so that means the patients on plant-based telehealth, we're talking about their blood pressure and their weight and their cholesterol and their Crohn's disease and their multiple sclerosis. What can I do to decrease my risk for Alzheimer's, for breast cancer? So it's anything and everything. As a family doc, I'm thankful that I was trained to take care of people of all ages, and certainly continue that through lifestyle medicine as well.
Great, because somebody actually asked, sorry if I pronounce your name wrong, Nizahi maybe, is there a solution to autoimmune disease? I've had skin conditions. Would that be something that you could do with a telemedicine appointment?
Sure. So I'd be happy to, so that's something that I'd be happy to talk with you about, but, just prepping, you probably already aware of many of these, but there are multiple docs who have written books about various autoimmune conditions. And that's one of the things that I love about the lifestyle medicine community, is that there's so many books from docs who have specialized in some particular area. So if someone asks me about, gosh, I have Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis, what can I do about that? And I say, okay, cool. Check out Alan Desmond, GI doc out of the UK. Check out Will Bulsiewicz, GI doc out of the US. Check out Ed McDonald, who you just had GI doc out of Chicago, had some really interesting things to say. And go check out their books, their websites, and you'll get that. And you'll have that for heart with the Estelsons and Dean Ornish, and you'll have that for diabetes with Neil Barnard and Mastering Diabetes and with Cyrus Kambata and Robbie Barbaro. And you have that with autoimmune disease with various writers as well. So there's Goodbye Lupus with Brooke Goldner, who I'm sure you know and have worked with Chef AJ. There are, let's see, there's work by Sarai Stancic, who has dealt with her own multiple sclerosis and has done lots of research and lectures on that. You could go, just go to Dr. McDougall's webpage and type in rheumatoid arthritis, for example, and you'll see all sorts of stuff come up. The same goes with nutritionfacts.org, Michael Greger's work. And so there's all this stuff, all this great stuff out there where you see people who have overcome their own autoimmune conditions with the help of a healthy diet. And, if you are in the middle of a inflammatory bowel disease flare, so you're in the middle of a horrible Crohn's flare, I'm not saying that eating a pound of kales is the only thing you need, right? As an alternative, as a lifestyle medicine doc, we like to marry the best of both allopathic, traditional American style medication with medicine, along with diet and exercise, sleep, and stress reduction, community, and all that stuff. So a combination of the two, and you are very likely to get your autoimmune condition under control.
That's terrific. Thank you. People are asking, should they be taking a prenatal vitamin even before they attempt to become pregnant?
Yes. So if you are of childbearing age and you are thinking of getting pregnant, then it's recommended to be on a prenatal. Now, is that absolutely necessary if you're eating as well as Chef AJ? Then maybe not, because you're getting a ton of folate, which is one of the main things that you need for a healthy neural tube, which is the embryological stage of forming your brain and spinal cord. So you're probably going to be getting enough folic acid from the foods that you eat. You're probably already getting enough calcium, and you're definitely getting, the healthy phytonutrients and antioxidants. Most of us don't. Most of us out there, especially the patients that I'm seeing, don't follow that healthy of a diet for multiple reasons. And adding a prenatal vitamin, adding fortified foods like breakfast cereals that are fortified with folic acid and things like that, all add to helping establish an early pregnancy, because it's in that first 6 to 12 weeks or so that organogenesis is going on, and you want to have all the nutrients available for your developing embryo, then fetus, then healthy baby.
Right. Just a fun question, because you said your mom was Mexican. Do you speak Spanish?
I do. I wasn't raised speaking Spanish. That was their decision to help maximize my English. It turns out my English is okay, and so I'm thankful for that. And I learned Spanish when I was in college, and going on from there. I worked a lot in Latin America, Central and South America. And so I'm fluent. I see patients in Spanish. The majority of my Latina patients in my job are monolingual, Spanish speaking. Yeah.
So when you were little, you didn't know it?
When I was little, I didn't know it. I think I heard it because that was my mom's first language, and that was what she still spoke with some of her family. And so my accent is pretty good. But if we're talking about a topic that I'm not used to talking about, like the constellations and something, not related to more day-to-day stuff or medicine, then it's very obvious that,
when there was something she didn't want you to know, did she talk in Spanish?
There was a little bit of that. And we have maybe shot ourselves in the foot with that, because my daughter, who's waving at me right now, wanting to know if she can watch cartoons while during my talk here, we have raised her speaking English, Spanish, and French, or at least understanding and starting to speak all three. And so we've definitely run out of languages that we can speak about her.
That's funny. Maybe sign language or something. So here's an interesting medical question. I think you can answer, because it's about veganism more than the condition. But Rhiannon said, I got severe HG, don't know what that is, with my pregnancies, and ended up on TPN via a PICC line. I hopefully won't get pregnant again, but if I do, is there a plant-based TPN?
Very interesting. So you got to love medicine for its use of abbreviations. So HG is hyperemesis gravidarum, and that's what we were talking about earlier when you're in first trimester and you throw up, you're nauseated all the time, you throw up everything. And then she had to get a PICC line, which is an IV that goes, another abbreviation, but an IV that goes in your arm, and that's able to give you long-term medications. And TPN is total parenteral nutrition, which is for people who are so sick that they can't tolerate anything in their gut. The only way that they're going to get any kind of nutrition at that point is through fats and amino acids and sugars and stuff coming through your vein. And so thankfully that is super a super rare thing when you look at all pregnancies, and even when you look at all women with hyperemesis gravidarum. Most women get better with some ginger, some medications, some dietary changes, but it's rare that you get to that point to where you need to get IV nutrition. So from a alternative, from a sort of plant-based for alternatives for regular food, I actually heard Ed McDonald, where if you look back on Chef AJ's shows, he spoke recently. He is a specialist in gastroenterology and nutrition, and he knows a whole lot about nutrition that comes in through a feeding tube, either in your nose or your mouth, or something that is directly put into your stomach or small intestine, that can be plant-based, either stuff that you mix up yourself at home or products that can be bought commercially. And that was the first that I had heard about that. And that's really interesting to know that that is out there, because when you look what's put into a lot of these nasogastric tube feeds and G-tube feeds, you certainly wouldn't want to eat it when you're trying to stay healthy. And so why are you eating that when you're trying to get healthy? And so that was an eye-opener for me. As far as sources for total parenteral nutrition that goes in your vein, you certainly should not be making that in your Vitamix at home and putting that in a bag. But I don't know how what is out there to know about the source of the different lipids and proteins and or amino acids that go into that. So it'll be a good thing for me to look up and learn about. And if we could find a way to share it with you, I'd be happy to once I learn. Yeah.
Great. We could add it to the show notes if you discovered. I know that for like people just on a feeding tube, there is vegan nutrition now that they can get.
Yes. Yes.
So that's good. Angela says, I have normal periods, but I have a history of low iron anemia, especially when I was pregnant. Now, over 2 years later, I am fully plant-based vegan. Are there ways to tell if my iron is low?
Sure. So anemia is super common during pregnancy, and most of the time it's due to what we call a dilutional anemia. It's just the body in its infinite wisdom is making more and more of the liquidy part of the blood to get ready for the blood loss that comes at the time of delivery, but not as much of the red blood cells to keep up with it. And so because you've got more of the liquid part of your blood and less of the solid red blood cells, you look relatively anemic, and that happens in a large percentage of women. Though, in addition to that, iron deficiency anemia would be the most common afterwards for causes of anemia in pregnancy, and that's why there's iron in your prenatal pill, and why a lot of women are either put on an iron tablet or maybe even better, talked about how you can get all sorts of great iron from your green leafy vegetables and whole grains and dried fruit and legumes, stuff like that. So if you're eating that sort of way now, and you have regular periods, there's a good chance that you're not anemic. But since anemia is common around the world, particularly more in women because of their monthly blood loss, the simplest way is just to get a blood test. And it's a cheap and easy and old blood test, and your main doc can get it, or we can get it through plant-based telehealth. But it's just, you look at your blood count, and then you can also look at iron levels and something called ferritin, which is a way that your body stores iron to see how your backup stores are doing.
Wow, that's funny. You call it monthly blood loss. That's what it is, but I never thought that's the only good thing about getting older, is to not have to deal with that anymore. I gotta tell you that, that's for sure. People are asking if there's a particular brand of prenatal vitamins you can recommend. I think somebody put My Kind Organics as a possible good choice.
So I don't have a particular one that I recommend for, if you are paying out of pocket. So a lot of women will get it through either their insurance or the clinic gives them a vitamin, and that's what makes sense financially for them. If you are in a place where you can be picky, I in general would say look for a pill that is, if it's a capsule, make sure it's vegan. If you're doing it for those ethical reasons, etc. But there's so many prenatals out there that have basically the same sort of stuff that I don't have a particular brand that I would recommend. So please, yeah, check out your fellow viewers' recommendations and see what you think about that. There's some, yeah, but make sure it's got some iodine in it. And there's some debate about whether or not extra DHA and EPA would be beneficial. And I think if that's what you want to do, just make sure that you get some of that because not every girl has it.
Great. Most obstetricians and most pediatricians are not plant-based. Do you think it makes it harder for somebody that is if they aren't? Because do they see them just kind of as a pain in the neck and like, oh, just kind of like how some chefs think of you when you're vegan, like,
Another one. Yeah. So yes, I think it can be. And I mean, you have very open-minded docs who, you come in and you say, I'm a runner and I think running is going to be what saves me. And even if they're not a runner, if they're open-minded and they're in tune to listening to their patient and supporting what really motivates them and owning in on what is their why, then you can support that whether or not you're a runner or not, for example. But some studies have shown that docs that don't exercise are less likely to talk about it with their patients, right? And so that I'm sure carries over to docs who, because of their beliefs and how they're raised or their, whatever is their life situation, if they're they're stopping at McDonald's on the way to the clinic between the hospital and clinic, and that's all they have time for, and that's what they, see as, oh, I'm going to get the chicken sandwich, and that's going to be the sort of message that they give to their patients, and if sometimes, and so if a patient says, hey, I'm vegan, oftentimes the first response might be, oh, well, we got to be really careful that you're not doing something that's going to harm your baby, instead of what we should be saying is, that is so cool that you've made those moves to help ensure your health as well as your baby's health. And if your baby's a girl baby, your grandchild's health, because she's going to have all of her eggs in utero already made. And so it's amazing what your lifestyle choices are going to do now to your future generations. And, when I was, like I said, I'm in a clinic that's where the people have tough lives and they are facing all sorts of challenges. And when I have a African-American woman who comes in pregnant and says, yeah, I've been vegan for X number of years, I'm just jumping up and down and saying, we got to talk about this and see how can we help spread your message since it's working for you, and how it can work for your community members.
Nice. You said doctors that exercise are more likely to talk to their patients about exercise. That's really interesting because I've seen a lot of doctors in my life. I don't think one of them ever mentioned exercise to me. So I'm thinking, God, did none of them exercise? Your daughter learning 3 languages, does she find one easier? Because I learned French before I was 11, and I learned Spanish, and I'm not very good at Spanish after the age of 40. So I found French easier, but I think it was just because I was younger. So since she's learning all 3, is there one she seems to take to more?
Yeah, so she has an edge with the French. So my wife, her dad is French and her mom's North American, and she was raised all over the world with her family as they moved around. But she had French and English from a young age. And so she has carried that over and has spoken with our daughter in French almost exclusively, not exclusively, but the majority of the time. And it was what our daughter spoke more of when she was a baby was French and not English even. And now she goes to a French charter school, which is just down the block. It's a public charter school that we were lucky enough to live to. So she's getting education in French as well as getting it from home. So I'm struggling to keep up so that she can keep her Latino roots. And so she understands a whole lot of what I say, but we're still dragging it out of her to make sure she can understand.
That's interesting. Nataria says, can hypothyroidism cause anemia?
Hypothyroidism.
Excuse me, hyper. I should put my glasses on. She said, can hyperthyroidism cause anemia? I just got diagnosed with anemia recently, and the only thing I can think that caused it is the hyperthyroidism.
So it's a good question. And I'm sure that thyroid imbalances in thyroid health are tied with anemia. It might be through what we call anemia of chronic disease or anemia of chronic inflammation because of the autoimmune basis, both for the common cause of hyperthyroidism, also known as Graves' disease, and also probably the most common cause of hypo or low thyroidism, which is called Hashimoto's disease. I'm sure they're associated with anemia. I can't think of the exact process right now. But yes, if the first step would be working with your doc to get all the usual, check your iron level. And in those tests with checking the iron level and the other ways to see what kind of anemia you have, they will see if this seems to be predominantly related to inflammation or if it's related to a deficiency in your diet or something else interfering with it.
Great, thanks. Diane wonders how old your daughter is, your trilingual daughter.
Yeah, so she just turned 7, and which amazes us. She's our one and only. She keeps us busy. Yeah.
Did you raise her on plants, and was your wife's pregnancy plant based?
Yeah, so that's an interesting one. That gets into the I guess the day-to-day interesting challenges that come with raising kids and all that stuff. And I'm always amazed at the various ways that plant-based households are run, right? And so you hear some people who are like, from the day that I switched overnight to unprocessed whole food plant-based, we have not had a single thing that wasn't grown in our garden in our house or something like that, to all the way to, gosh, it's totally out of our hands. She's going to make up her own mind once she gets, old enough to do that. And so we are somewhere in between. She has not eaten any meat that I'm aware of, and is still full of energy and running around. And she had some dairy growing up, and she will still occasionally have some, but we've pretty much stopped buying it. And she loves, if she needs a plant, some sort of a milk, we usually have almond or oat or hemp or soy in the fridge. And we're trying out different vegan cheeses, even though I don't, consider them health foods. But if, I can find something that satisfies that itch for her. And for us recently, it's been talking with her a little bit about, well, as we pass a dairy farm in NorCal here, say, oh, those pins that we just passed are where the calves, the baby cows are taken when they're separated from their moms during the whole, dairy process. And we watch that sink in. And, my wife knows how passionate I am about this. And she said, she's not into showing her any kind of images or anything like this at this age, but just talking with her, at 7, she's so compassionate, and she will, she doesn't want to hurt a fly. So seeing her process this stuff has been really moving and very interesting. And it doesn't mean that she's not going to, have a piece of cheese pizza at some point. But I think overall we're happy with the direction that things are going.
Right. Oh, that's wonderful. How old should a child be, or could a child be, to get some of this information? Or how young is too young to expose them to these images?
Gosh, I mean, that's such a personal decision, and various ways to go about it. And so, for some, the kid comes in while you're watching Forks Over Knives, and they see someone go from 300 pounds to 100 pounds, and that is an image that sticks with them. Or they see, any part of the process along the way could be, I think there are various films out there, sort of PETA related, and others that are so graphic that it would give my daughter nightmares. And while I want her to know about the reality of this, I also don't want to scar her. And so I think it's just going to be, this is the first time I've been a dad, and I'm learning this along the way. And so it's a day by day thing.
Yeah, that's a good thing I didn't have kids. They'd be watching Earthlings from just kidding. So does she say fromage a lot? Fromage, fromage.
I know she says it all. We are lucky enough to go visit her family, her dad, predominantly in France, and it's so amazing still for me, having been raised just speaking English, when I'm watching my daughter, listening to other children her own age speaking French and answering back to them, and it's the child's mind is so plastic and in a good way, and so moldable, and so at this age, she's just soaking it all up. And we do what we can from a nutritional standpoint, where we're trying to get in all the greens, which we, either have to force her to, sit and say, make sure you've eaten your next bite of kale or avocado, even though we're both, pretty much plant-based, but or sneak it into a smoothie. And she knows very well, as she watches us put some spinach or whatever from the garden into her smoothie, and she eats it up and she doesn't mind at all. So she is, we're doing what we can to ensure that she's got a great start in life. And
nice. Do you have any pets?
We've got a bit of a zoo here. Currently, we've got one dog, one cat, one rabbit, a bunch of fish, and a couple of old hens in the back. And so it's a bit of a farm, and it makes it hard to leave. But if you can believe what they say about households that have a dog have less asthma and allergies, I shouldn't sneeze for the rest of my life.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, Susan was saying taking your kids to a farm sanctuary, that's something they can sometimes make the decision on their own, because they don't show graphic things there. They just show what the animals are like when we don't kill them.
For sure, yeah. And she is, we've been to wildlife rescue places and stuff like that. And at her aunt's little farm around here, she sees what a healthier lifestyle can be. And that introduces the topic of what the alternative is, which is unfortunately what most of us don't know about, don't want to know about, or little by little starts to soak in. And yeah, you do with that what makes sense ethically for you. I think one of the obstacles for a lot of us is that we still feel like we need the protein from that, even grass-fed beef or something like that. And you hear about these great changes, swapping out beef for beans, and how you're getting all the protein you need, plus fiber that you don't get from beef, plus a fraction of the water needs and land needs. And you're not cutting down trees in the Amazon, and you're not polluting the waterways. And of course, there's not the same amount of suffering on the part of the animals or the people who are working in these pretty horrible situations with the factory farms.
Yeah. If somebody lived near the hospital you practice at, could they see you in person? I forget was that Vallejo? Where did you?
Yeah, so I have a very, for women who are members of Contra Costa County, which is just east of Oakland, so Martinez, San Pablo, Richmond, etc. Then yeah, so I'd be happy to be your basically your OB. If I have a very small lifestyle medicine practice in person in Sonoma County in Santa Rosa, where I live. So if you live right here in town, can see you in person. But thankfully, through plant-based telehealth, we have the benefit of anywhere where you live in California, or anywhere where you live in Texas, or basically anywhere where you live in the world outside of the other 48 states. I can see you because of the way malpractice and stuff goes. Yeah.
Nice. Do you have time for exercise?
Yeah, I do. So I'm a bit of a runner and a bit of a cyclist, and have done like maybe some half marathons or something like that. I've been thinking about doing a marathon, but when the weather's not good, I like having alternatives. So for a winter, I joined a Thai kickboxing class and got beat up by 18-year-old girls mostly, and was humbled by knowing a fraction of what Thai fighters go through. And I do, in the morning when it's too cold for me to go out for a comfortable run, maybe I'll do jumping jacks and sit-ups and push-ups and hand weights and stuff for half an hour, and finding some consistency, as you're a big fan of Chef AJ, of trying to, even if you're doing a half hour, 3, 5, 6 days a week, depending on what time you got, that makes a huge amount of difference. And while I think personally that the best thing we can do for our health is based on what we put into our mouth, exercise is certainly very important for heart health and cancer risk and longevity. And so do what you can.
Right. Yeah, I spent 10 winters in Santa Rosa, and that's why I'm in the desert now. It's just too cold there. One time at True North, the fountain, the bird fountain, it froze over. Icicles.
Yeah, and you and I being in California are still quite spoiled, pretty much no matter where we are. But you're in one place long enough, we can always find something to complain about. And so for me, being from South Texas, and I am quite warm-blooded in that sense, even a relatively-ish cold, wet winter in Northern California, it can be challenging for me. But my buddies who come out from the Midwest and the Northeast and elsewhere, love the opportunity to make fun of my weakness when it comes to weather.
Right. Well, it's so nice getting to know you. You seem like a very kind, compassionate, and knowledgeable doctor. And now we know if somebody has for telehealth, it can be anything, but specifically, it's nice to know that somebody does the OBGYN that's plant-based, because I really don't know one except for one that's going to be on the show Sunday, Deborah Shapiro, and I'm not sure if she sees patients or not. So thank you so much. And thank you for having a menagerie.
Sure, it's my pleasure to chat with you and to chat with all your wonderful listeners and anyone else who is new to this and joined in today. It's really a great privilege to be here. So thank you.
Do you do any social media? Would you like people to follow? I don't know if you're on Instagram or anywhere you want people to follow you, or maybe you don't.
Sure. No. So yes, I have a Facebook page, and a Instagram account, which are the Facebook business page and the Instagram account are both fairly new, but I'm starting to add to it. And I think it's under Dr. Jeff Pierce. And, plant-based telehealth will do through Lori Marbus, et cetera, we're doing Facebook Live events. We had a talk the other day with one of our lovely OBGYNs that's in the group, and we talked about menopause, and that was on initially, I can't remember now if it was initially, I think maybe on Facebook, but you can find it in various ways. And so, please follow along and help spread the word.
Great. And thank you. And we'll see you back in the fall. You'll probably talk about a specific subject we don't know yet, but we have a whole week of the wonderful doctors from plant-based telehealth lined up. So thank you so much, Dr. Pierce. It was nice to meet you. And thanks all of you for watching another episode of Chef AJ Live. We have a bonus show today in 2 hours at 2 p.m. Nick DeVorn from Local Spicery will be doing a cooking demo. If you haven't tried their spices, Dr. Pierce, they're really good. He has a pepperoni spice that is salt-free and meat-free, and it's delicious.
Cool. I'll check it out.
Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.